Good evening, everyone. My name is Tara Mitchell and I'm a national convener for Sisters in Crime, an organisation formed in 1991 to share a collective passion for women's crime writing. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to our very first event for 2021, Crime Waves, which is brought to you and the whole world through the miracle of Zoom this evening. Before I introduce our fabulous authors, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and we recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay respects to their elders past and present, and we are honoured to share in their tradition of storytelling. Tonight we'll be talking to Belinda Alexandra, Sarah Thornton and Lisa Walker for about 35 minutes about the appeal of salt-laced mysteries and why the beach makes for the perfect scene of the crime. Now let me introduce the panel. Belinda Alexandra, Belinda, if you could give us a wave, please. Is the author of 9, count them, best-selling novels and a non-fiction title, and she's been published around the world. When she's not writing or indulging in her love of travel, she's a volunteer rescuer and carer for the New South Wales Wildlife Information Rescue and Education Service, which is quite the mouthful. It's usually shortened just to WIRES. Her latest book, The Mystery Woman, with this fabulous cover through HarperCollins Publishing, is set in Shipwreck Bay. That was hard to say. Welcome, Belinda.
Thank you so much, Tara.
Thanks for coming along tonight. Sarah Thornton, if you give us a wave, Sarah. Cast off the lines to her 20-year law career, not long after being awarded Australian Corporate Lawyer of the Year in 2016. She took up writing novels as a way of liberating her imagination from the structured confines of legal and corporate life. Her second novel, White Throat, again with a fantastic cover, is set in Queensland's Great Sandy Straits, and it's just out with Text Publishing. Earlier this month, it was Pick of the Week for The Age, Sydney Morning Herald and Brisbane Times. So congratulations and welcome, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Tara.
And last but not least, Lisa, if you could give us a wave. Lisa has written 6 novels and was selected for the Varuna HarperCollins program in 2011. Which led to the publication of Lyrebird by HarperCollins in 2012. And that was followed up by Sex, Lies and Bonsai, which is a fabulous title, in 2013. Lisa grew up in Fiji and spent her teenage years in Brisbane. She's worked as a bartender on the Barrier Reef, wilderness guide in the Snowy Mountains, an igloo builder, and lectured in outdoor education and also worked in environmental communication. Her second YA book, with a wonderful cover as well, is The Girl with the Gold Bikini. And this one is set across the Gold Coast and Byron Bay. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks so much, Tara.
Fabulous. So we'll start off, first of all, Belinda, if you could just give us a brief synopsis of your book.
Okay. The Mystery Woman is set in 1952 in the small isolated town of Shipwreck Bay on the New South Wales south coast. Rebecca Wood is fleeing a scandal in Sydney, and she goes to this small town hoping to live in anonymity. Unfortunately, her plans go astray when she finds the town is not all as it seems. It's not the quaint little respectable seaside village she was hoping for. Her first distressing discovery is her predecessor committed suicide in the office where she's going to work. And to her distress, she's soon being chased by the dashing local doctor, a violent whaling captain, a corrupt shy secretary, and a gaggle of town gossips. So she soon finds herself caught up in the dark secrets of Shipwreck Bay.
There's a lot going on there. Lisa, if I could get you to give us a brief synopsis of your book, please.
Yeah, so The Girl with the Gold Bikini stars Olivia Grace. Olivia's just finished school and she's ducked out of her friend's gap year tour of Asia. Instead, she's got her dream job working as a trainee private investigator in an office on the Gold Coast. She has to deal with a boss who's her former childhood friend. They used to play Star Wars together. He was her Han Solo to her Princess Leia. And now he treats her as a bit of a sidekick when she's trying to get out there and really start kicking some butt. So Olivia's pretty much stuck in the slow lane until she gets sent off on what looks like a routine cheating husband sort of case down to Byron Bay. And there things pick up very quickly when she encounters feuding yoga instructors, some dirty whale activism, and an extremely creepy guru.
Awesome. Again, a lot going on.
Yeah.
And again, last but not least, Sarah, if you could run us through your second novel, please.
Sure. So Clementine Jones is the main character here, and she has tried to recover from a shameful secret that she has in the past. But the problem is it's no longer a secret. It's become public news in her hometown in Victoria, and she's essentially trying to escape that kind of bubble. The small country town. She goes to Queensland in the northern part of Australia, to the Great Sandy Straits. She picks up a house sitting gig there, and she's kind of just laying low there. But her problem is she's always frequently bored and or easily bored, and so she kind of gets herself hooked into this environmental campaign to save a turtle. And of course, she's a disgraced former lawyer. She's not practicing, but she offers her services pro bono to the campaign. And everything goes haywire. The whole low profile sort of stay under the radar thing is disturbed when there's a violent death in this small town of Fema on the coast of the Great Sandy Straits, just overlooking Fraser Island. And everyone thinks it's suicide. The police have very readily write it off as suicide. But Clem, she knows the victim. She knows it wasn't suicide. I won't give too many spoilers, but she's compelled to try and uncover the truth in these circumstances where no one else is interested. She's up against the whole town, basically. There's a mining development going ahead. All of the town pretty much want it for various different reasons. And she believes the turtle campaign, which is basically opposing the mine, trying to save turtle habitat. She's basically investigating every proponent of the mine as a potential suspect in this case, and it takes off from there. And
she gets herself into all sorts of trouble again.
She gets herself into all sorts of trouble. She has her trusty sidekick who happens to turn up. He has his own dilemma going on. And his name's Matthew Torrens. He's a ruckman in the footy team that she was coaching previously, and an ex-standover man. So he's kind of a handy guy to have around.
Absolutely.
But brings a whole host of mayhem.
It does indeed. So aside from your main characters, the reason we've brought you all together tonight on this panel is that there's a common theme as beaches and coastal towns and so on. So I wanted to sort of get your views on place as a character in its own right. So obviously coastal regions are pretty dangerous places. There's sharks, jellyfish, riptides, cliff-face rockfalls. That's before you even get to the human beings with murderous intent. So Lisa, perhaps I'll start with you. We've got two sort of distinct characters for your book in that sort of regard. You've got the glitzy, glamorous Gold Coast, and then you've got the more sort of upmarket, refined, Instagram perfect Byron Bay going on. So could you take us through how those two different places work as characters and how they influence the other human being characters within the book?
Yeah, look, I feel like I've got such great settings right on my doorstep because I do live near both those places, and they're quite contrasting, you know, because as you say, the Gold Coast, it's kind of, it's got all the skyscrapers, you know, named Chamonix and Marina Sands and whatever, and it's got, you know, that really tourist thing going on. And then just down the road, it's about 40 minutes drive, Byron Bay, which is such a contrast. And it is that kind of alternative, new agey kind of scene, although these days, of course, a very upmarket one because there's a lot of money coming into the town. So Olivia ducks between those two worlds. She's kind of she's a Gold Coast girl. She's grown up on the Gold Coast. But when she gets to Byron Bay, she gets tangled up with a lot of shady characters who come from that kind of scene that Byron has. So I moved to on the north coast of New South Wales in 1999. And when I moved here, I was quite taken aback by, for example, the yoga scene, which was unlike any yoga scene I'd ever encountered before, and yeah, just how intense it was. I was used to yoga classes where you sort of got to relax and listen to nice music and have incense wafting over you. But in Byron, you go to a yoga class and you just sort of crawl out, drenched in sweat at the end. And
wow, okay.
and also they're all very big personalities, all the yoga instructors. So that sort of forms quite a big part of the story, as does the surfing, which is another big part of my story and also my life. I spent a lot of time on the Gold Coast as a teenager, and at the time it was all very kind of puberty blues, but the girls just stayed on the beach sort of minding the beach towels, and so I didn't get to surf then. It just wasn't a thing we did. But having moved to the New South Wales North Coast, I learned to surf as an adult, and I gave that struggle to Olivia. It was a struggle, and I gave it to her. So she's trying to get back into surfing after a bit of the setback, and she's encountering all those strange kind of people that you meet in the surf.
Yeah.
So all of those things, I think I love having those two quite contrasting settings.
Yeah, and I'm after that, I can see how much of you is actually in Olivia, so that's really interesting. Thank you for that insight. Now, Belinda, the mystery woman set in a tiny coastal town called Shipwreck Bay. Now, I'm assuming this is a fictional place because I could not find it on any Google Maps. And it always amazes me that big city folk think that they'll be under less scrutiny when they move to a small town, as anyone who's ever lived in a small town should know. So what is it about this tiny remote seaside town that's allowed so much dark, sinister activity to thrive?
Well, when I was writing The Mystery Woman, I really wanted to create an Australian Gothic story. And one of the important things about the Gothic, one of the classical elements of Gothic is the setting, and it should have a sort of foreboding feel about it. It should be fairly isolated and so on. And to me, when I was thinking about it, I really wanted to write a modern Gothic. So how to add a more modern element to it or feel to it. And the thing that I was thinking about when I think about the Gothic, if I saw a haunted, rundown, spooky looking house, I would just go in the opposite direction. I wouldn't be like, the fool in the movie who always goes, let's go to the basement. And you think, no, you never go to the basement. Don't you know that? But I think the idea of Shipwreck Bay, it's in an idyllic setting. It's in a beautiful, lush setting by a beautiful, pristine ocean. And this pretty little town, it should be a lovely place to stay. And to me, I find that much more scary than something that looks horrific. For me, it's really like the ocean. The ocean looks beautiful on the surface, but you don't know what's lurking underneath. And that's really what Shipwreck Bay is about. It's behind this sort of little respectable town. All these dark secrets are going on. And of course, I think the setting of the ocean is just perfect for that, the sort of contrast of the beauty and the danger. And also in terms of being a small town, no, Shipwreck Bay is fictional because I love the New South Wales South Coast. I didn't want to insult any town.
That's very wise.
and I've also thought that I've had to apologise to people that live in the small towns because it's not so much my opinion of what every small town is like. It's more like a small town mentality. Yeah. And even though I haven't lived in a small town myself, I could really understand that mentality because I've lived in sort of small, isolated circumstances. Even in a corporate office, you can have that sort of underlying tension and nastiness, or in a mother's club or a tennis club or any of those kind of things. So that's really what I wanted to bring to the setting.
I think you've done it beautifully. And speaking of corporate offices, let's talk to Sarah about the setting for Clementine Jones, which is about as far away from a corporate office as you can get, obviously, but that's her origin story. So being set within view of Fraser Island, which is just off the southeastern coast of Queensland, I found out in my research that's considered the #1 most dangerous beach in the world, Fraser Island. So was that a conscious decision to have all of that action taking place basically in the shadow of this really significantly dangerous but beautiful place?
Well, look, it kind of is the answer to that. My first book was set in a place that I didn't really know much about. For various reasons, it had to be in northeast Victoria. And when I came to write my second book, I really wanted to set it in a place where I knew the place intimately and I could really absorb the sense of it. And at the time when I started, we were about to move on board our boat, to live on our boat. And if you think you can see the background moving here in my corporate office, you can. That's because we do live on a boat, and that is that's South Stradbroke Island in the background. I could probably wave to Lisa from here. So we were moving on our boat, and I knew that we would be heading north from Brisbane, and pretty much the first place you can stop and really enjoy the surroundings is the Great Sandy Straits, which is on the inside of Fraser. And the little town I chose to set up, it is fictional, is on that mainland side overlooking. So not so dangerous there. I'm sure there's bull sharks there. I haven't caught any, caught plenty of other fish there, but no bull sharks, but I'm sure there are. But that was the reason, was to really absorb it. And in fact, the very first scenes of Whitethroat were written sitting at a park bench overlooking the Great Sandy Straits. And I hope that it kind of comes through in the writing of it. So that was the reason. I also wanted to have boats in my book.
Of course.
And have some, kind of crazy things happening with boats. And in the first book, there's a car chase. I can guarantee you in the second book, there is a boat chase. So look, that was kind of where I was coming from. And I really wanted it to be Queensland. I've lived here for the last 26 years, even though I'm a Tasmanian. It feels very familiar to me now. So that was kind of the heart of it.
Wonderful. And yes, the writing and the familiarity that you have with that place really does come through in the writing. So I think you've captured it beautifully. Another theme I wanted to look at is all of the characters in the book, whether it's for themselves or on behalf of others, end up getting some kind of revenge. So Clementine, she's on a mission to get revenge for the death of her friend Helen. Olivia on behalf of her clients, which then sort of morphs into a more personal reason. And Rebecca, and on behalf of Stefan, and without giving too much away, some revenge on pretty much almost every other female character in the book. So Belinda, perhaps I'll ask you, because Rebecca's, she's a bit of a naughty girl, so there are some things that we don't like about her. She's a little bit haughty going into a very normal, conservative country town. So is that revenge story part of how we get the reader to like the character and start rooting for them, even though there are lots of reasons we shouldn't like them?
Yeah, look, I think it's our first impression of Rebecca is that she's not so likable, but she's hurt and she's bitter about many things. And I think as the story goes on, you start to see her reasons for why she feels the way that she does. And she probably doesn't intentionally set out to get revenge. She accidentally, in defending herself and fighting for herself, and she learns to fight for herself and stand up for herself. Revenge sort of happens, as it often does. But I think we do, it's one of the things, I think from the midpoint of the book, we sort of go from thinking, gosh, she's a bit up herself and a bit difficult and a bit distant, to actually being on her side. And I really like that sort of enfolding of getting to know her character, not really necessarily being on side with her from the first page, but actually developing a relationship with her. And I think that's how real life goes, because I've recently been thinking about someone, they say first impressions are everything, but when I was thinking about them, I was thinking my first impression was lousy. They just, they've just grown on me after all these years, and you've discovered layers that there's more to them than you thought. Yes. So, yeah, I would say in the mystery woman, first impressions are nearly always wrong.
Yes. That is extreme. Actually, I think that's almost a theme for your entire book. First impressions are wrong. Don't believe the first line you read.
Think about it a bit more.
And Lisa, I guess more for I'm intrigued by your book because Olivia is just adorable. There's not much to not like about her. I think she does what we'd all like to do, stuff her face with Mars bars and make smart ass remarks about anyone she chooses. But she really gets into I guess that female empowerment and the Me Too movement. So that's almost getting revenge on society as a whole. So can you take us through how she's gone from this, meek, mild, I don't want to travel overseas with my friends, to basically becoming this kick-ass heroine on the end, again, without giving too much away, but she's quite public in the demonstration.
Yeah. So Olivia does, come to her position feeling a lot of doubt about her ability to actually do the job, and she's getting over an assault in her past which destroyed her confidence, which actually happened in Byron Bay. So going to Byron Bay also has, she has mixed feelings about that, and that kind of stirs up a lot of stuff for her. So that kind of thing about being a girl and helping girls is kind of endemic to her personality. So when she discovers or makes friends with all these girls who have an issue with workplace harassment and discrimination and so on, it does get her fired up. And she's always, she's lived on the Gold Coast her whole life, and she's experienced this kind of difficult environment because she's, as you say, she loves eating her Mars bar and wearing her cargo pants, and she's not a glitzy kind of girl at all, but yet she's looking around her and she's sort of seeing this beach body perfect beach culture and the meter maids in their gold bikinis and this kind of thing. And so her revenge on this particular creep, and I don't think it's giving too much away to say that it is the creepy guru who they all take revenge on. It kind of it's sending up that whole beach perfect body culture, and it's allowing the girls to really stand up for themselves and do it in bikinis.
Yeah, how fabulous.
Yeah.
And Sarah, I guess with Clementine's revenge, hers is also tied up in a whole lot of redemption, not only for herself, but for the town, looking after the turtles, which is what Whitethroat is actually named after. It's the turtle, in case anyone was wondering, but also redemption for the football team that she looks after, and so on. So, and again, I won't give it away, but she really does have a reason for us to not like her very much, because of the lapse that she had in her concentration, which the first book's based on. So can you run us through how she's sort of linked all that revenge in with redemption, not only for herself, but the people around her?
Whoa, that's let me give it a try. Okay, so yeah, I would say there's definitely an element of vengeance, if not revenge. Vengeance in the sense of she feels that the victim of the crime, Helen, her darling Helen, that she knew as a child, was very close to, she knew that she hadn't committed suicide. And she felt that her life was being passed over and that there really wasn't a proper acknowledgement of this good woman and the contribution she'd made. And I do love to write about women who are making a contribution in some way. And so it was kind of a vengeance in the sense of seeking truth, and the truth about Helen, and trying to reframe her life as it really was after her death, and have it known, about this good woman. And so in that sense, I guess you could say it's kind of a seeking of truth and justice, and a kind of vengeance thing as well. In terms of redemption, it's, because she has had this issue in her past, and I can say it's fairly well clear in the first few pages of the book. She has driven while under the influence and had a car accident and killed a young mother. She was actually convicted of manslaughter and spent time in jail. And this shame and guilt that hangs over her is the reason why she's no longer practicing the big Sydney lawyer that she was. She just can't face any of her old life. So she's still working her way through all that. And yes, there's definitely a redemptive journey going on. And it's really about Clementine trying to come to terms with what she's done and find a space, a new place for herself in the world. And it's, you know, you get that sense, especially in Whitethroat, where she's kind of not got so much of that kind of post-traumatic chaos that's going on in Lapse. In Whitethroat, she has moved on a little, but she's still, now the real big problem for her is, so what next? What do I do? Do I go back to law? Do I go back to coaching this footy team in this tiny little country town? And she's got all these pressures on her and different obligations pulling her every which way. So she's yeah, and I think there's definitely a redemptive journey in the course of Whitethroat for Clementine. But the thing that is complicated is she never ever sees, well, if I give my life up, that cancels out the one I took. There's never that equation going on in her head. She doesn't see it like that. She doesn't think she can ever equate, she can ever cancel or neutralize what she's done or make up for it. So it's kind of a bit more complex, and she's really on this kind of strategic journey to try and, it's chaotic, but it's strategic in a sense, to try and find her way out of her personal, emotional and psychological torment. But yeah, I see her in each novel. She's getting there. She
is making progress.
Yes.
And now all of you have written such wonderful, strong female characters, and there's a really strong thread of empowerment through all the books. Now, Lisa, my understanding is that you first met Olivia in your imagination quite some time ago, and it was and the draft was written, what, 10 years ago? Would that be fair enough to say, or the concept?
Actually more like 15.
15. So that this is well before the Me Too movement. So I'm just wondering how that global action and that global solidarity of women affected the subsequent drafts of the book once you'd started it 15 years ago.
Yeah, so all of that was already in there, but it certainly helped me to focus things and also understand better how the role that this book would actually take in society, because, you know, having had that movement now, you know, girls are reading it with that in mind. And, you know, I think it's great that, you know, because it is a young adult book, basically, though, of course, a lot of adults read young adult, but for teenage girls to have that model of a teenager overcoming that kind of past, you know, and teenage girls all deal with a lot of that kind of thing, and becoming stronger, basically just becoming empowered and taking back her life. I think that's really important. So I think it did certainly in the redrafts focus more on that aspect, even though that stuff was already there. Yeah,
absolutely. I think we've all been teenage girls ourselves, haven't we? So we know what the struggles are like. But then once we grow up, we're still faced with a lot of dark threats of domestic violence and so on. Now, Belinda, in your book, there's some remarkable examples of gaslighting and obviously domestic violence as well through the book. How did you cope with that emotionally, writing about such dark and menacing topics?
Look, I think it was difficult, and I do go deep into the emotions of it. But I think I really wanted to show how much of the violence is psychological first. And we're talking a lot more about that now. And of course, the book's set in the 1950s, so there was a very different attitude then. And I think a book can entertain, but I think a book also has to make us think about things a lot. And the fact is, in Australia, we're still struggling with domestic violence. In the 1950s, women, they weren't able to have jobs in the same way that we can. They didn't have the same level of financial independence. Their livelihood or their financial well-being was often dependent on men. So women were advised, if they had a violent husband, to appease the husband somehow, to don't make too much noise, make sure he's got his favourite dinner on the table, as if somehow by changing her behaviour she could stop the abuse. And in that way they were colluding with the abuser by making the woman think that she has some control, because he tries to tell her psychologically that she has control where she has no control. And I think sometimes in many ways we still collude with the abuser, even in our good intentions, by, you know, thinking that the woman can do something about this situation, that she can change it. And I think we're starting to understand that people that commit domestic violence have a disordered way of thinking. It's not our way of thinking. So we can't solve this problem by using our way of thinking. And traditionally, we've sort of looked at abusers from thinking that these are men mainly, but of course women as well, that are driven by stress or some life stressor. And in that way, we've almost excused their behaviour. But I think now in studies and things that we understand now, that quite often these abusers are using their tempers, their outbursts in a very cold way to invoke fear. Their heart rate doesn't even go up. And I think Margaret Atwood said it very well when she said, men are afraid women are going to laugh at them and women are afraid men are going to kill them. So in the terms of male to female domestic violence, even if it's never said, even if a wall is never punched or a bottle ever broken or a physical threat ever made, all that psychological violence, the woman knows that her life is in danger, even with just the psychological violence. And that's really what I thought was important to show. So I show just this normal physical violence, but to me, the most important part of the story is the growing psychological, controlling, emotional violence.
Absolutely. And I think you've covered that really sensitively, and showing that it's not just the meek and mild women who can be affected by this. It's women who are very strong and independent can still be pulled in by that psychological torment. So I think you've done it beautifully.
Thank you.
I think it's really quite inspirational. So hopefully we'll be able to help a lot of women with that story as well. Now, Sarah, we've got Clementine, who is extremely capable and strong-willed. One might even say pig-headed, perhaps. And she's very, very used to acting in a male-dominated world, from corporate law to coaching country AFL team. But we don't really know much about Clementine before her time as a corporate lawyer. So are you able to give us some hints into her backstory as to how she became so strong? Or you're laughing. I'm not even sure you've thought about that part.
It's interesting. Oh, it's an interesting point on the writing process, I guess, is, to what extent do you fill in those background pieces? And for Clementine, it really was fairly simple. I didn't need to go too far because she was fleeing from it. But essentially, she's early 30s. She's been a standout young lawyer. She's on a path towards partnership, probably, had she kept going, when her brilliant career is cut short through her own lapse of judgment, which we've spoken about. Look, the background wasn't so important. So I wanted her to be a leader. I felt that a lot of portrayals of females in crime fiction tended to be, unless they were a cop or a detective, they tended to be fairly passive females. The girl on a train, she's going back and forth on a train and observing the world in a very passive sense. Woman in the Window, both of these novels I loved, by the way, they were fantastic. She's observing the world through the curtains in her lounge room, and both of them addicted and kind of, as I say, this passive kind of existence. And so I really wanted female leaders in my books, and especially the protagonist. So she can step up and take charge. And in White Throat, you see her, she gets herself to the top of the organisation solely so that she can investigate and have conversations with the executives, the mining executive, the mayor, the leader of the Progress Association, all of these people who have a real motive for wanting the turtle campaign just to go away. Yeah. And so she's very commanding in that situation. But also there's others, like you find Sergeant Wiseman. She's just a minor character in White Throat, but you know, she has a role, it grows, and you kind of see another commanding woman.
Yes, so perhaps a spin-off series for Sergeant Whiteman at some point.
That's
there you go. You can have that. You can have that one.
For a spin-off series for Matthew Torrance. They love Matthew.
Yes.
So there you go. But yeah, certainly, it's so important for, you know, young girls, young women to see actually playing out, a woman actually taking charge in an organizational setting. That was the other thing. So it's both, you know, it's the football club in the first book, and in the second book it's her the Wildlife Association of the Great Sandy Straits.
Yes, wonderful. So what I might ask for you whilst we sort of wrap up the theme section of it is just in perhaps one sentence, what message would you like your readers to take away from this theme of female empowerment? So perhaps I'll start with you, Belinda, on that one.
Well, I think the message is always trust yourself, because Rebecca listens far too much to social proof, and so social proof doesn't count much. So if you're getting red flags and something's worrying you, listen to yourself and trust yourself. And I think that's where she takes the reader in the end. It's really about trusting yourself and being self-reliant, because even if people want to save you, they can't. You have to save yourself.
That's an excellent message. Thank you. And Lisa, your one message you'd like people to take away?
Yeah, I think for girls to back themselves, and if they see something they want, to aspire for it and take it.
Excellent. And Sarah, your message?
Yeah, well, ladies, women, girls, whatever you want to refer to yourself, we're all equipped to be leaders, and we can be the master of our own fate and our destiny, and we can step up and take charge when we need to. We all have that power.
Excellent. If we do, just some of us don't know how to use it. So I think you ladies have shown us the way in which we can do that. I wanted to finish off with a couple of fun questions. So obviously there's a lot of criminal activity in all of your books. What would you need to wipe from your internet search history if the police ever came knocking? So Sarah, you I think you already have one of these. I'm pretty sure you've got several.
Well, let me see. Let's pick one. Well, certainly how to escape from a zip tie around your wrists. That is a really important skill. I haven't actually tried it, but I've found it on YouTube. You can do it. It is a real thing. You don't need a knife.
Awesome. So this is part of the female empowerment strategy, is to make sure we know how to escape.
I suppose though that might not interest the police. So let me pick another one. How high do you have to be up a cliff for it to be fatal?
There's just a little push behind that one, perhaps. Nice, I like it. Lisa, any for you?
I think one of the most dangerous yoga moves to use.
Does it involve any kind of headlocks at all? Or?
Mainly kick sort of moves.
So lethal yoga, there you go. That's a class you could start up in Byron.
Yeah.
Lethal yoga.
Yeah.
Belinda?
I think the police would have trouble finding anything in between all the cat videos I watch. I think anything sinister has been cleverly disguised behind fluffy creatures.
That's a tip for the FBI. Check behind the fluffy cat videos. And last but not least, as we wrap up, which of your characters would you take with you to rob a bank? Sarah, we'll start with you.
Oh, that is so easy. Dorans, any day of the week. That guy is very, very handy, gentlemen, in any type of robbery or whatever you like, criminal activity, really.
He has proven his worth.
Even though he's going straight, remember.
Well, yeah, this is a hypothetical question. I'm not asking you to go and check out the Commonwealth Bank tomorrow. Hypothetical in case the FBI are watching this. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, Olivia and her grab bag of disguises, because she's got so many good disguises in there. I think I'd be going for the Norwegian backpacker model.
Very nice, very, very innocent looking, sweet and so on. And Belinda?
Oh, I think Nancy, because Nancy is just, when she wants something, she's determined to get it and nothing will stop her. Well, something will stop her, but we won't give that away.
That is an excellent choice. I think should be very good. So we are almost out of time, but before we sign off, we should choose the 3 lucky donors who've gone in the draw for the 3 packs of crime novels worth $150. And this pack includes a book from each of our wonderful authors this evening. So I'm going to ask each of you to choose a number between 1 and 26, please. So Sarah, I will start with you.
Oh, has to be 24.
24. So Elizabeth Flan. And Lisa?
14.
14. So that is Maggie Barron, well known to Sisters in Crime. And Belinda?
7.
Number 7 is Catherine Bateson. So congratulations to those 3 generous donors. And before we wrap up, I also want to let you know you can buy all of the authors' books from the Sun Bookshop, and they're a long-term supporter of Sisters in Crime, and they deliver Australia-wide. You can find them at www.sunbookshop.com. And on our Sisters in Crime YouTube channel, you can find other events just like this, plus our Murder Mondays interviews, which features both Australian and overseas crime authors, including Val McDermott, Kathy Rikes, Sarah Perezzi, and Anne Cleves. And you can keep in touch with Sisters in Crime through the website. You can sign up for our monthly newsletter, A Stab in the Dark, or better still, join us as a member. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So thank you once again to Lisa, Sarah, and Belinda. I've enjoyed myself immensely. I've got to know you a bit better and find out exactly what parts of you are in each of your characters in the book. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone for watching wherever you are in the world. Stay strong, stay safe, and keep on reading.